let's go over to 267. Please state where you're calling from and your name. 267.
Hello, my name is Belinda. I'm calling from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I have a question with, by the way, hello to, sorry, I'm a little nervous, to Mr. Tom Mesereau. It's an honor to speak to you. I have a few questions, and this is kind of different from the main topic you guys are talking about. It's about my questions regarding the estates, executors, and the valid will, and your take on that. I know that's not necessarily your specialty, Mr. Mesereau, because that's more of a estate law type thing. But I'm just curious about your opinions about that. My question is, or rather, a few questions about it is, Michael's brother, Randy, has been saying since Michael's murder that the 2002 will is invalid, and his reasons are pretty much, understandable. They were trying to contest the will because I guess Randy was implying that there was a will after the 2002 will that for some reason they're not showing it or they're not revealing it. And I wanted to know, what do you think about that? Also, can the Jackson family members still contest the will? I read somewhere that the statute of limitations for contesting the 2002 will or any will has been expired, so they can't contest the will anymore. I wanted to know, what do you think about that, and what do you know about that? Because some fans, including myself, would like to see these currently executors, step down and find the original. If there is a will after the 2002 will, find that will and use it in whatever executors is announced on there. They go ahead and run his legacy, because so far since Michael has passed, I believe, in my opinion, based on what I've seen, the executors have not been doing a very good job maintaining his legacy. I think their whole stance on Michael is promote him, promote the image, promote the likeness, make some money. But when people are defaming him and saying these horrible things about him, I see you, Mr. Mesereau, defend him in an excellent type of way, in a professional, reasonable way, the way it should be, and then the executors will release some type of weak statement about anybody, people saying these defamatory things about him, and it's like as if they don't really care that these people are saying these things. But let's say the Jackson family had issues with them, question the estate, they'll go release a statement, elaborate how much the family shouldn't say anything, shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that, prohibit family members from seeing each other, creating problems, and nothing this, and it just erases the whole reason why they did what they did in the first place. So I'm trying to end the question. So that's basically my question. It's a two-parter, but that's basically my question in regards to that. So I just want to know what you think about that.
Okay, Tom?
Pardon me?
Yes, you were inadvertently cut off for a second.
Oh, I'm sorry. What I was saying was, I don't mean to disappoint you, but you correctly stated I'm not an expert in probate law, which is the area of law that deals with wills and estates and trusts, that kind of thing. I've appeared in probate court in Los Angeles a couple of times, but on a different issue. I was representing someone who was possibly going to be held in contempt, and I was defending them. But I'm not a specialist in this area, and I intentionally did not get involved in that will contest. So I did not attend any of these hearings. I did not, observe the arguments that were made or what the judge said. My understanding is that he upheld the will that made John Branca and John McClain executors, and I'm not aware of any other will being produced that one might argue should replace it. So I have to assume that all of this was litigated in probate court, that the judge upheld I think it was a 2002 will, and that the legal system has determined that that will is valid and that John Branca and John McClain should be the trustees. As far as how the estate's being run, again, I'm not involved in it. I don't do any work for them. I don't represent them. I don't advise them. They don't tell me what they're doing. I don't know much more than anyone else does. From my point of view, the Michael Jackson estate is a business for profit, nothing else. The goal is to take the Michael Jackson name and music and image and property and make it a profit-making venture, and my understanding is that they've done that. My understanding is the estate is making a very handsome profit, that Michael's debt has been pared down, and John Branca has a long history with Michael Jackson, stemming way back to the early years of his career. He's a very accomplished entertainment lawyer in his own right. Separate and apart from Michael Jackson, he's represented many very successful performers and artists through the years. Was highly respected in Los Angeles from everything I heard. And remember, he was with Michael during many critical moments when he purchased the catalog, his tours. My understanding is he had his ups and downs with Michael, but many people do. But nevertheless, by virtue of his experience and his training and his reputation, I would have to assume that he's very well, situated to make a profit with this estate, and I think he has. Again, I'm not close to the action. They don't invite me to their events. I know people who go to them, and they tell me what's going on. But I'm not part of this estate. I don't advise them. I don't represent them, and they don't tell me what they're doing. So I don't think I can tell you much more than that, except I'm not involved. It's not my specialty. I intentionally did not get involved in the will contest. I wasn't in court for any of these hearings or arguments, and I didn't review a lot of the paperwork. So I don't know a lot more than most of you know. I really don't. I was just a distant observer, soaking in what I could, and that's really what I had to say.
Okay, 845, it's your turn. Please state your name and where you're calling from.
Hello?
Hello? Yes, you're on. Hello.
Okay. Hi. My name is Dawn. I'm calling from upstate New York. Hi. And I have a question about Blanca Francia. And my question is, it seems to me that she was brought in by Larry Feldman to, try to find evidence or a second child to support these Chandler accusations. Because they had absolutely, nothing really but Jordan Chandler's word. And so if they have another person, another child, and they desperately were trying to find one. So it seemed that she came out of the woodworks. She had been, of course, an ex-employee, and she suddenly comes on, I think it was Court TV or something like that, claiming that she saw something in the bathroom, which she then, in her deposition, said she did not see, but then she kind of said again later on maybe she did see. So I'm just wondering, I find that she is not a credible witness at all, but she seems to be the person that supported both the Gavin Arvizo and the Chandler accusations. So I'd like to ask Mr. Mesereau, Tom Mesereau, how you would assess Blanca. And I'd just also like to say that I think, in my opinion, she didn't fully understand English enough to understand the questions, because I found when she was asked, were they on the covers or under the covers, she really didn't understand those differences of meaning. Okay, that's my question.
Well, you're bringing back, memories from, almost 9 years ago. I recall that Blanca Francia, she worked at Neverland. Her son knew Michael. Her son claimed he was molested and testified for the prosecution, as did she. But my understanding also is that they both made contradictory statements. Jason, as I recall, had been interviewed by the police at one point and told them, nothing improper had happened. This is my recollection from the trial. I haven't reviewed this material in a long time. And then changed the story. I believe Blanca Francia may have done something similar. She may have made some contradictory statements. She also, as I recall, sold her story to, I think it was Diane Diamond, as I recall, who was with Hard Copy at the time. And I think that hurt her credibility as well. I talked to some jurors after the trial, and they didn't think Blanca Francia or Jason had been particularly affected with it. And see, what happened in that trial was that we established a pattern of people making contradictory statements and then wanting to profit from it. And I think this jury just began to realize that the world of Michael Jackson was very much characterized by people making completely contradictory statements, exonerating Michael 1 second, then changing their mind and looking for a paycheck in the process. And it just almost became monotonous. As I've said many times, one thing I had to do in the courtroom was portray the real world of Michael Jackson, which is not like very many other worlds, including the fact that everybody wanted to exploit him, in one way or another. And that's one of the great tragedies of the life of Michael Jackson, was that he became such a lonely person and so distrusting, because every time he tried to be nice to someone or tried to be kind, or every time he thought somebody was his friend, they turned on him at some point. And he felt that was a pattern and that it would just continue. And then, of course, he thought, I'll champion the world's children. They're not going to turn on me. They're innocent, and then not realizing that they can be manipulated by greedy parents as well. There's a lot of sadness with Michael, a lot of loneliness because of the enormous amount of distrust he had after seeing so many people turn on him and try to exploit him in one form or another. But I think in answer to your question, I think these two witnesses were very ineffective in the end because ultimately they made contrasting statements, and ultimately they seemed to want money.
Thanks for the call. Okay, let's go to California. Mark, I believe this is. It's your turn.
Hello, Matt. Good evening. Happy New Year to you.
Hi. Thanks for calling.
Mr. Tom, do you think Michael was a pedophile?
Of course not. I don't. It's not a question of thinking. I know he was not a pedophile. I know he wasn't. I had many discussions with him. When I get into a case, I don't believe anybody, okay? I start questioning everyone, including my client. I don't form conclusions till I've really dug deep into the evidence. So when I got into that case, I didn't automatically believe Michael Jackson. I wanted to study him for myself. I wanted to, question him. I wanted to look at the evidence. I wanted to then go back and talk to him about evidence I'd found. And I came to a conclusion that this man was incapable of harming a child and incapable of the kind of behavior that pedophiles engage in. So it's not a question of thinking. I know that Michael Jackson was not a pedophile.
Did he live like a gay lifestyle? Is that, is that one of his...
No, he didn't have a gay lifestyle. I mean, he represented to me that he was heterosexual. I believe him. He was compassionate towards everyone, no matter what race or ethnicity or sexual preference. He was a very kind person who saw the inherent dignity in people, no matter who they were or where they came from or what obstacles they had faced. And he was a very genuine, very decent, compassionate human being. But he represented to me he was heterosexual, and I have no reason to disbelieve him.
Okay. What's your opinion of Joe Jackson, the father?
Well, my interactions with Joe Jackson were very positive. Okay, remember, my experiences with Michael Jackson were limited to that horrible experience in the criminal case, and also about 9 months after the criminal case, Susan Yu, my law firm partner and co-counsel in the trial, and I represented him when he was in the Middle East. It was mostly Susan Yu, more than me. I did work, but Susan Yu was the one who was leading the charge. I was the lead criminal defense lawyer in the criminal trial, and she was the lead general counsel for about 9 months and interacted with Michael and Grace and people in the Middle East more than I did. I assisted her pretty much.
Right.
But those are my experiences with Michael Jackson. So my experiences with Joe Jackson are really limited to the trial. And he was very supportive, very positive. I never detected anything negative about him. He's funny to listen to at times.
Yeah.
I'll never forget on the day that Michael Jackson was acquitted, we were sitting at counsel table, and the 14th not guilty came down, the last one. And I hugged Michael and hugged my teammates, and Randy came up. He was teary-eyed and gave me a hug, and then Joe Jackson walked up with a big grin on his face and put out his hand to shake my hand, and he looked at me and he said, "You're almost as good as me."
Another question with this Catherine Jackson.
Yeah.
She wants the money for that documentary. What do you think? What's your take on that?
I don't know which documentary you're talking about. I really don't. I'm always hearing of documentaries being done, and there's nothing wrong with someone trying to make a living. And if a mother is going to spend a lot of time working on a documentary about her brilliant son's life, and she wants to get paid for it, I don't have any problem with that. If that's what's going on, I don't really know much about what you're mentioning.
Yeah, they're just different aspects of with the brothers, and they try to make their money. They have like a certain type of living. They're used to like millions of dollars, and I guess in order to maintain their living arrangements, they need to do that.
Well, look, we all have to make a living. We all have to put food on the table. We all want freedom and security in life. And, unless someone is really exploiting him and saying something that's false to feather their own nest, I don't see a problem with the Jacksons performing around the world and getting paid, or giving paid interviews, or writing books and hoping to get paid. It depends on how much you do it and how far you take it.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong with making a living. They're famous. Their brother was the greatest artist in history. And if, people want to pay them for interviews or pay them for books or whatever, I don't have a problem with that.
I think you should definitely have your own show. You're very informative. Another question. This Pearl Jr., what's your take on that? Is she out in the woods? What's going on with her? She sounds very somewhat intelligent. She's been on the King show numerous times. I've heard it. What's your take on that?
Well, I haven't talked to Pearl Jr. in a long time. She's always been very nice to me. She's a very intelligent
that
woman.
Michael Jackson's still alive, and
well, I don't subscribe to that. I don't believe Michael Jackson is still alive. I've looked at the autopsy report. I've talked to some people at the courthouse. And
there's no chance of it, then, huh? You don't think so?
I personally don't think so. I think the evidence is overwhelming.
You don't think there's even a little slim possibility, huh?
I really don't, because of the evidence that I've looked at.
A little inkling.
Pardon me?
No?
I wish I was wrong. Believe me, I wish I was wrong. I wish those who think he's alive were correct. I would like nothing better than for that to be true. And to have a great artist and a great humanitarian back on, the planet. The world needs Michael Jackson. It needs people who really stand up for others and are compassionate for the poor and the downtrodden. And, this is a man who opened the gates of Neverland to disabled people, to kids from the inner city who were surrounded by violence and poverty. He wanted to see people feel better and feel good about themselves. The world needs Michael Jackson.
White.
But unfortunately, absolutely. Ryan White, and also the young man from Orange County, California, whose father doused him with gasoline and set him on fire, and Michael paid his bills.
Yes.
The world needs someone like that. But unfortunately, I don't think he's still here. I really don't.
Hey, what's your take on Robin Roberts?
My take on her?
Good Morning America?
Yes.
What's your take on her and her coming out and finally admitting that she was gay?
Well, listen, I accept all sexual preferences. I don't judge someone because they're gay or heterosexual or asexual.
Why
whatever you are, you are.
And
that's the way God created you, and I accept the inherent dignity of all people, and I couldn't care less if she came out. In fact, I actually admire her a bit because, gay people have had a rough time in this society. They really have. Being treated equally, being treated with dignity. And I believe we're all equal under God, and I just think we all are human beings. We are who we are.
Yeah, but should the preference of people's likenesses cost them their career and stuff like that? They make such a big deal about these things.
Well, but we still live in a society
people
where...
feel like they got to hide their preference.
Well, but we live in a society where gay people are still not, are not treated equally. That's really true. And when celebrities come out and express their sexual preference, I think they send a message that we're all human beings who deserve dignity and equality. We deserve equal chances in life to be happy and to make a living and to provide for our loved ones. And the cause of gay rights is still an active cause in America. We're still battling this same-sex marriage thing. And, I think we have I think the modern-day civil rights movement in America involves gay people. They need to be treated equally like everyone else.
How many children do you have?
Pardon me?
How many children do you have?
I have one child, and I have someone else's child I helped raise.
Okay. Right, thank you for your time, and God bless you, your family and yourself. And I hope you get a show.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a caller from the UK. Caller, you're live with Tom Mesereau.
Hi. Okay. I just want to make sure you're talking to me.
Yes, I'm talking to you. Can you tell me where you're calling from? Your name?
Yeah. My name is Allie, and I'm calling from New York. I'm not in the UK.
Oh, okay.
That's why I was confused. So let me say hi, and hi to Mr. Mesereau.
Hi.
Excuse me. Okay, so, I followed Michael. I mean, let me just say outright, I'm a huge Michael Jackson fan. I'm 47 years old. I've been a fan of Michael ever since the Jackson 5 and so forth. I have to be honest with you. I kind of paid attention to the trial, and I didn't. I haven't read Aphrodite's book. I haven't read anyone's book. I tend to keep myself away from people's opinions of Michael. And, I'm a very spiritual person. I know that Michael was always very spiritual, but most people don't know. I also know that Michael was always very gratuitous to people, and I really do believe we should all love, honor, and appreciate him. I don't believe he was a pedophile. I believe that if you look deeper into Michael's story, most people seem to forget that this was a family of children that, back in the day we would have considered that serious child abuse these days. And I think for all intents and purposes, you have to kind of look at the bigger picture here. I think Dr. Murray was the pansy. I think AEG was the devil, if you want to say so. I think other big Hollywood executives in the music industry had a lot more to do with Michael's downfall. And if people take a closer look in and around when all the accusations started flying about Michael being a pedophile, was also the time that Michael became very disenchanted with the music industry as a whole, right? And so I think they needed to create this monstrous image of Michael to sort of get, I think, on some level what they wanted to get out of Michael. And I think Michael was spiritual enough to see the bigger picture. And when he tried to step out of it, unfortunately, I think, and whether people call that a conspiracy theory or not, I think they went after Michael on every conceivable level. And what's the worst thing that you can say about somebody? You could murder somebody, you could rape somebody, you could do, I don't know how many heinous different crimes, but if you talk about being a pedophile to a child, that's one of the worst things that you can do humanly possible. I mean, I really do believe that Michael, I think underneath it all, I think he always knew that there was a bigger picture, and I think I've been listening to you tonight, and I've been listening to the callers. It's the first time I'm ever calling in on a show like this to express an opinion, but then also to ask a question of you. I find it incredibly disheartening that people want to antiquate. Well, number one, let me just say this. The last caller, I found it very disheartening that he wanted to antiquate pedophilia and being gay, and he cared what Robin Roberts, gay, straight, or otherwise. It has nothing to do with that. Most of your pedophilias, by the way, are usually straight men. They're not gay men. So let's get that out of there. And everybody has the right to be who they are. We're all created equal. Do you think, Mr. Mesereau, that underneath it all, do you believe in your heart that Dr. Murray really was the pansy that was, I guess, used for someone else's more divisive ill will toward Michael and really getting what they wanted out of Michael? I mean, let's face it, Michael was a huge moneymaker. He's been the top selling artist, around the world for, more than 30 years. 40 years probably. And number one. And number two, has it ever crossed anybody's mind that at the end of the day, this was a man who really allowed his inner child to surface, and more than he did anything wrong, I think he did everything right by creating Neverland, by creating a place where children could come and just be children, because he was not allowed to just be a child.
Well, I absolutely agree with that, Dave. I mean, I've said many times that I think Michael was very tortured by the fact that he thought he'd been robbed of his childhood. This is a young child who was rehearsing till 3 in the morning at the age of 5, getting up a couple hours later to go to school, signing contracts when he was 5, being forced to perform on the road, late nights at clubs in faraway cities when he was just a child. He always acknowledged that this harsh regimen and harsh routine did help him develop his talents in a very magnificent way, but the price he paid was never really being a child. And I think, most people listening to this show remember that statement by Michael that he walked out of the studio, I think it was in Detroit, and saw some kids in a schoolyard across the street and wished he could be one of them, just being a spontaneous, free child. And he never experienced that. And I think he developed a great reverence for children and felt that children were being damaged in ways that he may have been damaged. That children their feelings were being suppressed, that they were being, forced to experience violence and the kinds of harshness that war brings around the world. He felt that children were our future and that we needed to pay more attention to children and, what they need and what they meant. He never dreamed that anybody would turn this into a pedophilia charge. Never in his wildest mind did he ever think this was possible. And nothing could have been crueler to do to Michael Jackson than to accuse him of being a monster and a criminal who, destroyed and manipulated children. Remember, the Arvizo charge was not only that he had molested a child, but that he molested a child who was riddled with cancer, who was possibly dying. And the charges by the prosecution were that he took this seriously ill child and intentionally plied him with alcohol to soften him up, for lack of a better word, to be molested. I mean, what kind of a crueler charge could you have made against someone as sensitive about all this as Michael Jackson? It was a harsh, cruel, nasty, scurrilous, way to treat him. And I don't know if he ever totally recovered from it, but Michael was an extremely intuitive, extremely sensitive person, a genius who saw things we don't see and felt things we can't feel and heard things we can't hear, and felt that he was in a unique position to make the world a better place by trying to get all of us to focus on the needs of children. Remember, there's that interview where he wanted an International Children's Day to be honored, by all countries around the world. Sounds somewhat naive, somewhat idealistic, but that's what Michael wanted. And again, the cruelest thing you could have done to him was accuse him of these horrific charges. As I said, it wasn't just a lewd conduct charge or an improper touching charge. They said that he had given alcohol to a cancer-stricken child whose kidneys were under attack, who had lost some of his spleen, and that he did this in a cold, heartless way to prepare this child to be molested. I mean, what could be nastier than a charge like that? That's the kind of stuff we had to deal with in that criminal case. Michael was a fair-minded person, a person who accepted all of us, no matter where we were from, how much money we had, what our ethnic background or religious background was, what our sexuality was. He accepted everyone. He embraced everyone. And because he was so wealthy and so famous and perceived as so vulnerable, the forces of darkness just surrounded him, and it's just very, very sad what he faced in the last chapter of his life. Now, as far as AEG goes, they're big corporate interests. I don't think either AEG or Conrad Murray wanted Michael to die. I really don't. I think that Conrad Murray and AEG wanted Michael to live. I mean, Michael's dying was a disaster for Conrad Murray. Conrad Murray had visions of making all this money and obtaining all this fame and going on the biggest comeback in entertainment history. He didn't want Michael Jackson to die, nor did he, intentionally do anything to take his life. I think he was stupid. He was stupid and greedy and carried away with fame and fortune. And I think the last thing he wanted was to see Michael pass away. And the same with AEG. I think AEG, he wanted Michael to go to London and put on one of the greatest performances ever in history. So I don't think there was a conspiracy by these people to kill him at all. I think Michael's dying was a nightmare for all of them. Unfortunately, he was not well, we've learned, and he just, was in the hands of the wrong physician. And again, I was asked before, did I think Conrad Murray ever lied to him? I don't know, because I wasn't there watching Conrad Murray when he gave advice to Michael Jackson.
Well, we know he did lie, though. He was a liar in terms of the trial. In terms of being truthful with the police.
I don't believe, him when he's tried to blame Michael for all of this. That he's the doctor, not Michael. But nevertheless, I don't think he intended to see Michael die or intended to hurt him at all. I really don't. And I don't think he was in a conspiracy with anyone to see Michael destroyed. And I don't think anyone was using him to try and hurt Michael. I really don't. I think he just was carried away with fame and fortune, carried away with his position, was not a good physician, and took some risks that turned out to be disastrous. And I think AEG was hoping that Michael would go overseas, go to London, and just perform, give the best performance of his career. That's what I think. People were not conspiring to kill him. I don't believe that for a fact.
Absolutely. All right, a few more questions and we'll get you out of here. 562, it's your turn. Please state your name and where you're calling from. 562.
This is Hannah in Los Angeles. Can you hear me?
Hi, Jen.
Yes.
I'm with Tom Mesereau.
I thank you, Tom, for everything you've done for Michael. I know I don't have a lot of time, but the show has been a lot about Michael being a pedophile. I just want to state that I've always been fascinated by Michael always having bodyguards who had backgrounds in law enforcement. And I always thought, well, how can he have bodyguards that could be there all the time and, they would pick up if anything was going on. Michael LaPerouse gave a deposition, and it's on T. Michael Jackson website. He gave a deposition over 2 days, and he said he always had a key to Michael's room. Michael didn't mind him coming in unannounced. And he said on Access Hollywood that I saw that he said that Michael didn't meet the profile of a pedophile.
No.
And also that on T. Michael Jackson, on the transcripts of the deposition, he said, if Michael were a pedophile, if I had any inkling, I would have arrested him and handcuffed him myself. Michael LaPerouse worked for the L.A. Sheriff.
Sure.
And he was a lieutenant and a sergeant with the L.A. Sheriff. And he retired after 22 years. So I know I don't have that much time, so if you want to make a comment.
Well, you make a very, very valid point. Why would you have all of these employees at Neverland living at Neverland, okay, with access in and out of your house, if you were a criminal and a pedophile? You know, you would yourself, you would want potential witnesses around. And Neverland, you know, had numerous employees whose life revolved around Neverland. They would observe everything that went on. And they had access to his quarters. And they had an ability to observe what Michael Jackson was doing. And your point is absolutely correct. If you look at the people he surrounded himself with, if you look at how many people, you know, he surrounded himself with, the idea that he would be a pedophile committing crimes in a secretive way makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense. Your point is extremely well taken, and I'm well aware of Mr. LaPerouse's comments. He was very pro-Michael Jackson. He was adamant this man was not a pedophile from everything I have read, and I agree with the statements you just made. The way he lived his life and who he surrounded himself with, it made no sense that he would, you know, be a secret pedophile. It's silly. It's ridiculous. It's not true.
No, that's true. And just one more comment, too, is that I've read that pedophilia or a pedophile, that is a progressive disease that doesn't, you know, if Michael was a pedophile, they would have caught him.
Well,
you know, and if he had child pornography, they would have arrested him because that is illegal. He would have, there would have been fines.
In my opinion, you know, there was the perception that this man is immensely wealthy, immensely famous, and very vulnerable. That he's someone he's a very artistic, eccentric man who is not violent, is not forceful in the ways that violent people are forceful. People looked at this very unusual artist and said, you know, we got to find a way to sue him. We got to find a way to extort him. We got to find a way to, you know, make sure he pays us a lot of money because it beats working. That's how I see it. And unfortunately, the forces of evil saw a very, very clever path to get to his wealth, and that was to accuse him in the worst way anybody could have accused him. That is to say that he is molesting and damaging children. It was the most horrific, horrendous, malicious type of charge you could have made against Michael Jackson. It was a thing that would have, he would rather have been called a murderer than a child molester, believe me. You know, this was the worst way to damage him. He was put through a nightmare with these allegations, and unfortunately, they destroyed a large part of this great human being. But people are greedy, people are manipulative, people are nasty out there. When you see someone with this kind of wealth and this kind of fame, and at the same time he looks so vulnerable, and looks so sensitive, looks so kind, then the word gets out, he doesn't like going to court, he doesn't like lawsuits, and suddenly the floodgates are open. As I say, that 93 settlement just sent a message out to the world, sue him, you'll get some money out of him. And lawsuits just started coming, and it all culminated in that criminal trial in 2005 where he was treated horribly. You know, to see him come to court 5 days a week for 5 months and have to face allegations that he conspired to extort a family, that he conspired to falsely imprison a family, that he conspired to abduct children, that he plied a child with cancer with, large amounts of alcohol, not caring what it did to the child, only caring about molesting him, that he molested other, children. I mean, what a nightmare this man was put through. It was just the most diabolical nightmare he could have faced. And he didn't deserve it, and it shouldn't have happened. But as someone said in describing Michael Jackson, he was a delicate soul in a cruel world. And a cruel world it was at times, for sure.
And thank you. And let me just get a few Facebook questions out of the way here, and then we'll let you go here, Tom. And thank you for staying for triple overtime. Okay, Nan Forster, Facebook. Does Mr. Mesereau have any thoughts regarding Jim Clemente, the pedophile expert that was supposed to testify but was not able to for the prosecution, but he's still claiming to this day that Michael was guilty?
Well, I'm not aware of these claims because I haven't followed this person. But Mrs. Foster is correct. The prosecution did not put on a molestation expert in that criminal trial. And I suspect they didn't because their other witnesses were being destroyed on cross-examination so much. Because they had consulted, a number of experts, including an FBI expert. But, in the most watched criminal trial in history around the world, they never put on a child molestation expert. That's correct. But what this person is saying now, I don't know anything about it. I haven't followed any of it.
Oh, did the defense or the prosecution call Ray Chandler? And if so, why not? Or why didn't they?
He was not called. Again, I don't know if the judge would have allowed him to testify. He had published his book before the trial. In my opinion, he probably thought it was a good time to sell a book, and it was a very salacious type book, very anti-Michael Jackson. I don't recall the prosecution ever even considering calling him. And if they had, we would have probably emphasized that he was a lawyer and that he was trying to sell a book for money and all that. They probably didn't think, he would be very effective for those reasons, but I don't recall there ever even suggesting they were going to call him.
Oh, really? So that never came to fruition?
Ray Chandler is the brother of Evan, as I recall, who's a lawyer in Santa Barbara, and wrote the book that came out before the trial, which, again, I have to tell you, I read the book a couple of times. It was a wonderful roadmap for me about what the prosecution was going to try and prove. And as horrible as the book was, and as much as I disagree with it, they did me a real favor by giving me this nice outline to study about what they were going to try and accuse Michael Jackson of. So, as a defense lawyer, it was a benefit to me.
Okay, we got Same Fan MJ, Vindication MJ also. In case the lawyer cannot get a straight answer from a witness, he usually tells a story by asking questions. What story was Thomas Mesereau trying to tell by asking June Chandler whether she ever dropped her clothes in Michael's bedroom and ordered food there? Was there a specific reason for that question?
I don't recall that question.
You don't recall it?
I would have to go back and look at the questions I asked on cross-examination. I don't recall a question like that. I could have. Did this person say about dropping clothes?
June Chandler, right.
I don't recall that question. I honestly don't.
Okay. Also, they ask, why didn't June Chandler's live-in maid testify at the trial?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the prosecution that.
So that that wasn't nothing.
I recall that I was examining June Chandler from the point of view of trying to establish that she and her family wanted money out of this. And I recall that I think out of that settlement, I think she and her ex-husband got some money, as I recall. So my point of view, and also I think Michael bought her jewelry and treated the family to trips, to Las Vegas, and I think to Monte Carlo. And again, I have a vague recollection of some of this, but I was trying to show that they were just, they were trying to exploit him like so many others. That was the point of my examination.
Final question.
This was just a long line of people who were trying to exploit him.
Final question. A few years after the trial ended, you gave a speech at Harvard University and took questions from students there. Someone asked you about the previous allegations, and you stated if Jordan Chandler had testified against Michael Jackson that you had witnesses who were prepared to testify against him. Without revealing any confidential information, can you explain how you came in contact with those witnesses and what they were going to say if you had called them to testify?
Well, there were two ways we found these witnesses. One, I sent my investigator out to find whatever he could find along these lines. And number two, I got some phone calls, some messages on my phone machine at my law office, people who wanted to come forward and tell me that they had heard Mr. Chandler, make statements that contradicted the claim that he'd been molested. You may recall that there was a school teacher who testified that I believe. I'm trying to think now. I'm getting a little. This is a while ago now, but no, we went out to find. We thought he might be a witness. I was studying the facts of that whole allegation, the books, the evidence, the depositions, the settlement agreement. I was reading everything I could to find out what I could about the 93 case because I had not been involved in that case. I didn't know Michael at the time. I was not one of the lawyers in that case.
So those books you've been talking about actually helped you in a way.
Well, I got some phone calls from some people who claim that they claim that Jordy had made some contradictory statements. We had some witnesses we were planning to call if he came in to testify that he'd been molested. But as you know, he didn't testify with the prosecution. My understanding is he did not want to come in and assist them. And I even was told that he had fled overseas, so they couldn't force him to. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I was told. But yes, we had some rebuttal witnesses to come in and say, Jordy Chandler told me, different things. And I don't remember exactly what some of that was. But yes, we were prepared to contradict him like we were prepared to contradict so many other prosecution witnesses or potential prosecution witnesses. Now remember, the prosecution's theory was that victims of molestation are embarrassed by what has happened to them, and they often deny it happened. And that particularly young men, are embarrassed by it and will make denials. And that those denials are very consistent with the way victims react. So I suspect that had we called witnesses like that who claimed that Jordy Chandler had told them contradictory things to what he had said on the witness stand, I'm sure the prosecution would have, made that argument.
Well, that would have been a blow, but Jordy didn't even show up, though, so you didn't have to deal with that situation. But I want to thank you for staying 20 innings, if you will, Tom, and appreciate it. I didn't expect to get these amounts of calls, and I'm sure the callers appreciate that you took each and every call, and commend you on that, and I appreciate it so much. And I want 2014 to be a super year for you, and I thank you so much, from the bottom of my heart, for coming on the King Jordan Radio Show.
Well, Jordan, thank you very much for inviting me. It's always an honor to be on your show. You prepare these shows like nobody else does. And you really dig into the facts. And, you know, these shows that you do are not just spontaneous events. You really do your homework. And I think the Jackson fan community really owes you a real debt of gratitude. And thank you for the honor of appearing on your show. And best of luck for the coming year as well. My best to everyone who tuned in, and hope you all have a wonderful year.
Well, God bless you, Tom, and we'll speak to you soon. Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Tom Mesereau. And, of course, we are going to have Mr. Randall Sullivan. We should have that next week. Also, some WWE wrestlers. Keep up with us on Facebook.com/KingJordanRadio. Find me on Twitter at Mr. King Jordan. Also, the website that I need you guys to go to is, let me get the website here, www.KingJordanSportsAndMedia.com. So, appreciate it. I apologize that I couldn't get all the questions that everybody wanted. The overloaded calls. But again, thank you everybody for listening, and we will definitely speak to you soon. And thanks a million for everybody who helped. I can't name everybody. Also a shout out to Luna Joe 67. Follow her videos. What did happen to Michael Jackson? A deep look into the 2005 trial. What did happen on June 25th? And what did happen after the trial? You can find all that information on Luna Joe 67 site. So thanks everybody, and we'll speak to you next time on King Jordan Radio.